Welcome again to the Metric Hub YouTube channel. So this is the part 2 of the June grade 12 2024 economics paper 2. Right, so without wasting any further time, let us get into question 3. This is question 3. Answer the following questions. And yeah, so 3.1 says give any 2 examples of explicit costs. So what is an explicit cost? So firstly, let us define what an explicit cost is, right? Let's define what so an explicit cost, it's an out-of-pocket. That's an out-of-pocket direct cash pay. So meaning that you take money out of your own pocket as a businessman or as a producer, out of pocket or direct cash payment a business makes to someone. So it's it's not part of the business books. It's not part of, so it will be recorded later. It's like petty cash, if you may. So it's an out of pocket or direct payment of a business made to someone. So explicit costs include payment of wages, monthly rent, or paying for electricity bills. Paying for electricity bills. So those are what we call now explicit costs. So you can just take 2 of these 3 examples, right? And then we go to 3.1.2. We go to 3.1.2. 3.1.2, it says, how does collusion, remember we did collusion in the first part of the video, so you can go and check that video. It said, how does collusion affect the global competitiveness of South African businesses? Right? How does collusion rather affect the global competitiveness of South African businesses? So, firstly, it destroys the pressure to compete. Why? Because now you have 2 businesses or 2 companies that coincide together to do what? To affect the market prices. Right? So the first one is that it destroys the pressure to compete. Then secondly, because businesses don't compete, what then happens is that there is loss of motivation. There is loss of motivation to be product efficient. So products now start being inefficient. Ne? So rather businesses start producing less quality products. So businesses don't compete and there's a loss of motivation for product efficiency. So those are the impacts, or rather that is how rather collusion will affect the global competitiveness of South African businesses, right? So that is 3.1.2. That is 3.1.2. And then 3.2, it says study the cartoon below and answer the questions that follow. There you can study the cartoon, or you can take a picture or take a screenshot so that we can quickly answer the question. So there you can rather take a screenshot or a picture so that we can answer the questions that follow. So it says 3.2.1. 3.2.1, it says identify, so let's rather do this, 3.2.1. Identify the state enterprise depicted in the cartoon above So it's the South African Airways, the SAA or South African Airways, the South African Airways, right? And then 3.2.2, name the market structure under which it operates. So South African Airways, because it's an airline, it operates under oligopoly. A few firms or businesses that control the market. A few firms or businesses that control the what? The market, right? Now we go to 3.2.3. It says briefly describe the term. Briefly describe, so let's just put it here so that we can have more space to answer, okay? 3.2.3, it says briefly describe the term overt or explicit collusion. Remember, we were talking about tacit or implicit collusion. Now we talk about overt or explicit what? Collusion, rather, right? So explicit collusion, this is when firms in an industry openly coordinate actions to fix prices. So they don't hide it, they just do it openly. They do it within the market, right? So this is when firms in an industry openly coordinate actions to fix prices. So let's say we take, for instance, SAA and let's just say Broad Airways, then they enter into the market to do what? To fix prices and say a flight to, say, Joburg or Johannesburg is now, say, 1.7. So now they coordinate. They talk openly, directly, and formally to do what? To increase the prices of what? Of flights. So they coordinate. So that is what explicit collusion is when they do it openly. So implicit collusion, it's when they would do it indirectly, and then explicit, it's when they would do it directly. All right. So that is what we mean when we talk about explicit collusion. That is what we mean when we talk about explicit collusion. All right. So that is 3.2.3. That is 3.2.3. And then now let's move on to 3.2.4. 3.2.4, it says, why is it difficult for new firms to enter the airline industry? So these are the things that are required now. So this is why now it is difficult. Ne? So here we'll just put requirements. Here we'll just put requirements. So to show how difficult it is to enter the airline. So firstly, there is massive upfront capital cost to do what? Purchase a commercial airplane. So for you to enter the market, the first thing that you need to do is to be able to purchase an airplane. And you need to have a massive or rather huge amount of capital upfront to purchase a commercial airplane. To purchase a commercial airplane. Then secondly, you need to do what? Build infrastructure for your planes. You need to build infrastructure, né? And also meet strict regulations set by the airline commissions. Set by what? Set by airline or rather airline commission. So you need to meet strict strict regulation set by airline commissions. All right. So that is why now it might be difficult for new new firms to enter the airline industry. All right. And then let's go to 3.2.5. 3.2.5. It says, what impact would the collapse of the airline have on the South African economy? So let's say, for instance, if an airline stopped working, right? We take, for instance, airlines like Mango and SAA, for instance, which collapsed. So what impact did it have on the South African what? The South African economy, right? So firstly, we look at what? A wide spread of unemployment. So people will then start losing jobs. People will then start losing jobs. Then what happens is that with that, now how it affects the economy is that the unemployment rate then increases, making it difficult for the government to get what? Taxation and rather to provide for the what? For the community or for the country. Right? Now we look at the industries that it affect. We look at tourism industry will be affected. The tourism industry will be affected. So people will not be able to travel. People won't be able to travel, which will then lead to the hospitality industry collapsing, which will then lead to the hospitality industry collapsing. So those are the reasons that would rather the airline, if the airline collapse, would cause on the economy of the country, the impact that it would have on the economy of the country, right? So that is question 3. That is question 3.2. All right. So let's move along. So now we go to 3.3. It says study the logos below and answer the question. So there we have it: KFC, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Hardee's, Subway. Right. So those are the logos, right? So please again take a picture. So take a picture there so that we can easily answer the questions. Right? 3.3.1. So let's start with 3.3.1. 3.3.1, it says state the nature of the products in the market as illustrated above. So because they all make fast food, this, or rather these products, would be differentiated. They all make fast food, but different kinds of fast food. So it will be differentiated products. Differentiated products, right? So the KFC fried chicken bucket is completely distinct from a McDonald's Big Bag burger. So there you have what KFC would makes chicken, McDonald's they make burgers, and then Pizza Hut they make. So they're all in the fast food industry, but they make differentiated what products. All right. And now let's move on to 3.3.2. Let's move on to 3.3.2. It says, name one other industry that operates in this market structure. Name one other industry. So here you can mention what? You can mention the hospitality industry, hospitality industry, so I said there, I will look at the what? The hospitality industry, then the electronic industry. You look at the electronic industry. So we were looking for other industries that operate in the same market structure, which are differentiated products, hospitality industry, electronic industry, and the fitness industry. The fitness industry. So from there, you just choose one industry, right? So let's move to 3.3.3. It says briefly describe the term non-price competition. Briefly describe the term non-price competition. So it refers to a situation, it refers to a situation where a business, it refers to a situation where a business competes to win customers. Refers to a situation where a business competes to win customers using factors other than price fixing, right? Other than what? Other than price fixing. So if a massive advertising, or rather think of a massive advertising campaign, free delivery, extended warranties, and unique packaging. So those are factors that are used, right? Advertising. So we look at advertising when a business does free delivery. So they're using factors. They're using factors other than doing what? Other than manipulating the price of the product, other than manipulating the prices of the. So that is non-price competition. That is non-price competition. And then there we look at 3.3.4. We look at 3.3.4. It says, why are monopolistic competitive businesses reluctant to compete based on what? Based on prices. Let's quickly move this one. It says, okay, why are, this one, fix this, I'm not sure what's happening. Okay, there we are. It says, why are monopolistic competitive businesses reluctant to compete based on prices? So 3.3.4, what we need to understand is that if one fast food joint drops its prices, if one fast food joint drops its prices, it will risk an aggressive price war. So now, this is where now you'll see all the fast food joints or all the competitors do what? They slash the prices. They slash their prices because they want to match what? They want to match the first competitor's price match. So in the end, no one gains extra customers because now everyone's profit get completely destroyed. So no one will then get new customers. It leads to a financial instability. Financial instability. It leads to a financial instability. It leads to a financial instability. Right? So that is 3.3.4. And then we go to 3.3.5, or rather, yeah, 3.3.5, 3.3.5. It says, explain why businesses in the monopolistic market are said to be allocatively inefficient. Number one, they possess market power. They possess market power through branding. They possess market power through branding. So that is why businesses in the monopolistic market are said to be allocatively inefficient. Right? Number two, they risk, or rather they restrict, not they risk, they restrict. They restrict. They restrict their output. They restrict their output so they can charge a markup price. So they restrict their output so they can charge a markup price. So they can charge a markup price. Right? So they are not producing at the social optimum where price equals marginal cost. They are not producing at the what? At the social optimum where price equals marginal. So the price equals the amount, or rather the marginal cost that they inquire. So resources are not perfectly allocated. Resources are not perfectly allocated. Right? And then now let's move on to 3.4. Let's move on to 3.4. Let's quickly move on to 3.4. Let's quickly move on to 3.4. It says, draw a well-labeled graph to illustrate economic profit for a monopoly market. Right? Okay, all right. So that is 3.4. That is 3.4. So let us quickly try to. All right. So that is 3.4. Just want to quickly just get it there. Okay. Okay. 3.4. So for this graph, you want to show a monopoly making massive bank or making massive money. Right? So for the first thing that you need to do is we draw our axis. So price will be here. And then quantity will be here. So if you do math, you know this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. Right? And then the first thing that we need to do is draw a steeply downward sloping, what? A steeply downward sloping aggregate, or rather, so we're gonna start there. So just forgive my drawing. So that is our what now? Average revenue, right? And then, so this we're gonna label it, we say average revenue, and then we go on and we draw an even steep line. We're gonna call it marginal revenue, right? And then now we draw a tick shaped, right? We draw a tick shaped. What is a tick? So this is the tick shape. This is our tick shape. So what is our tick shape? It's our marginal cost. We draw our tick shape as a marginal. So this is our tick shape. We draw our tick shape as a marginal cost. So now where marginal costs need to intercept what? Marginal revenue, there we draw a line straight down to, so we draw a line straight down to label our profit maximization. So from here, we're gonna draw a line to label our what? To label our profit maximizing quantity. We're gonna call it Q1. So that is our profit maximizing quantity. We're gonna call it what? Q1. Right? So we're gonna call it Q1. And then from there, we follow that line straight up to hit the average revenue curve. Right? To hit where is our average revenue? Here's our average revenue curve. So we go up straight with this, the same line, the same profit maximizing quantity. We go, it hits our what? Our average revenue. And then that gives you a high selling price. So we're just gonna put it here. It's our P1, meaning our high selling price. Right? So there you have it. And now we're gonna draw a U-shaped average cost. U-shaped average cost that sits below the price level at the quantity. So our U-shaped average cost, it sits below the price level at the quantity. So there you're gonna draw your U-shaped. There's your U-shaped. As I said, forgive my drawing, so I'll just repeat it again. Yes, there you have your U-shaped. What is it now? It's your average cost. Now, mark where it hits your quantity line as your cost one. Where does it hit your quantity line? Where does it hit your quantity line? There, so we'll just put it there. There it hits your quantity line. So it's supposed to be here, but there it hits your quantity line. You see our quantity line. Or rather, here it is here is our quantity line. Sorry for that. Guys, remember, here's our profit maximizing quantity. Where does our average cost hit our quantity line? It hits our quantity line here. You see, it hits our quantity line here. So that will then become what? That will then become cost one. So remember, this is price one and this is cost one. And then you shade in the entire rectangle between your high price and your lower cost. So here's that rectangle here. So what happens? You shade in this rectangle. You shade in this rectangle. So that shaded block is your economic profit. This shaded block is now our economic profit. There you have it, guys. All right? There you have it. There you have it. And then 3.5, it says, analyze the relationship that exists between marginal revenue and average revenue in a monopolistically competitive manner, or rather market, right? So because a monopolistic competitive firm faces a downward sloping demand curve, its marginal revenue curve will always lie entirely below its average revenue. So because a monopolistically competitive firm faces a downward sloping demand curve, its marginal revenue curve will always lie entirely below its average revenue curve. So why does this happen? This happens because, number one, to sell one additional unit of output, to sell one additional unit of output, the firm is faced, or rather it's forced, the firm is forced to lower the price. To sell one additional unit of output, the firm is forced to lower the price. So since it must lower the price for the next unit and all the previous unit it was selling, the extra revenue it brings in the form that final sale, or rather it brings in from that final sale from marginal revenue, is always less than the price charged. So because, or rather since it must lower the price for the next unit and all the previous units, as we've said, it was selling, the extra revenue it brings in from that sale of the marginal revenue is always less than, the average revenue. Therefore, average revenue is what? Greater than marginal revenue. Average revenue is greater than marginal revenue, right? So the unique level of product differentiation, the unique level of product differentiation, now determines the what? It determines how wide this gap is. Determines how wide this gap is. So that is what? That is 3.5. That is 3.5. So we've answered question 2 and we've answered question 3. We've answered question 2 and we've answered question 3. So you need to remember what? You need to remember your instructions. It says answer only 2 sections, or rather only 2 questions per section. Right? So here for question 4, we'll just go through it, but remember now you need to answer 2 questions. For question 4, we'll just go through it just by answering these questions, right? So even for the essay, we're going to choose 1 question. So I'll tell you the best essay to choose. I'll tell you the best essay that will actually get you marks without even thinking about it. Right?